Hello, scholars. Happy Friday. I hope you guys had a great week, and I hope you guys had a lot of fun with our science experiments that you participated in or that you watched on our YouTube channel. Today I'm just going to do a super quick review, and then I'm going to show you how to check out the Kahoot game that I made that you can practice what we've learned all week. So this week we have been working with changes in matter, and we talked about physical changes and chemical changes. I'm just going to quickly review this information, so go ahead and just follow along. In a physical change, matter changes form but not chemical identity. So again, we talked about how when we're melting ice or chopping wood or slicing bread, we are changing the way that a material looks, but that material or substance is still the same thing. Melted ice, even though it changes its form into a liquid, when we refreeze that water, it's still going to be ice. And even though the bread and the wood look different than how they started, those two separate pieces now are still a piece of bread and still a piece of wood. And in a chemical change, a chemical reaction occurs and new products occur. So again, when we talked about burning wood, a rotting banana, or fireworks, the substance that was there before is no longer there because it has changed, and that change cannot be undone. Now, I'm going to review some clues that can help you determine if there was a chemical change that occurred. So there are four main clues that a chemical change has occurred. One, there's a formation of gas, which can be seen by a fizzing or bubbling. The reaction will cause heat, light, or odor to be emitted. So this happened when we were burning our marshmallow. We saw the heat coming off the marshmallow. Three, a color change is produced. Again, we saw this when we were burning our marshmallow. The color of the marshmallow changed, and when we were putting food coloring into the milk, the color of the milk changed. And four, a solid is formed during the change. And an example of that would be baking a cake. So before you have liquid with like your milk or the eggs that you're using or the water, and then once you mix it with the cake mix and then you actually bake it, a solid cake is formed. All right, so now we're going to use those examples of the experiments that we used to further explain those physical changes that we made. So again, during our s'mores activity, we learned that we had a lot of physical changes in that experiment. When we broke the graham cracker in half, even though the two pieces no longer looked whole, those two pieces were still graham crackers. And when our chocolate melted, even though it looked a little bit different than when we first took it out of its package, it was still a physical change. And the only thing that was different in that experiment was the marshmallow. That was a chemical change because the marshmallow will no longer be able to form the way that it looked before. And we also learned that in our Diet Coke experiment, this was also a physical change. Even though there were bubbles in this experiment and we could no longer see the Mentos, we talked about how that Mentos were broken down. And even though that they dissolved, this experiment still showed a physical change. Now let's talk about the experiments where we saw chemical changes. Now we didn't do this baking experiment, but again, this is another example of a chemical change. When you're baking a cake and you put in the egg and the sugar and the cake mix and you mix it all together and you bake a cake, you cannot take the cake apart and you won't see these materials again. So that's another example of a chemical change. This is Victor from my class. He was actually participating and sent me a really awesome picture of him doing the milk experiment. And this was another example of a chemical change. When that dish soap went into the food coloring, the milk actually pushed the dish soap away and moved all those colors away because those reactions were positive and negative and they were pushing off of each other. And we were unable to take apart that dish soap and the milk and the food coloring. They were all mixed together and they made a new chemical or a new substance. Again, we didn't rot any bananas, but this is another great example of a chemical change. Remember, once that banana is brown and it's rotten, we cannot take those rotten pieces off and we can't make the banana look the way that it did before. So that's an example of a chemical change. And again, we have our marshmallow here. And once we burn that marshmallow, the way that it looks not only changes, but the actual substances inside of the marshmallow start to change. So all that burnt part there, those are different substances, and we are unable to take those brown pieces off, and the marshmallow is unable to look the way that it did before. So that was another example of a chemical change. Now, on your class dojo later in the day, your teachers will be posting the link to the Kahoot game. I really challenge you to try your best to complete the game. I noticed that last week during my Kahoot review game, only a few students participated in it. So make sure that you're challenging yourself and you're trying your best to answer all the questions. And if you get an incorrect answer, remember that's okay. That's how we learn and grow our brain, by making mistakes. So when you get that Kahoot link from on your lessons on your class dojo, go ahead and click the link and it's going to bring you to this page here. Again, you're going to type in your name. It can be your first name and the first letter of your last name so that we know who you are. And then click OK, go. And then you'll go ahead and answer only the 5 questions there. And there are a couple questions where there are more than one answer. So make sure you're reading the question carefully. All right, I also wanted to draw your attention to our second grade YouTube channel. Here are the lessons that we posted today. Here's another view of the science experiment. I know here is a little bit hard to see because the square is really small, so make sure that you go back on the link for your virtual learning 4-2 so that you can take a look at the experiment from a different angle and you can actually see it a lot better, and you can fill out the worksheet a little bit better once you see the experiment up close. So again, we were talking about physical and chemical changes. Please make sure you are doing this Kahoot challenge to see how well you were able to remember the information that we learned. I'm really excited to see all of the scholars who participate in this and possibly send you a shout out in my class story. So make sure that you're participating in that, as well as the other Kahoots that your teachers are making. All right. Now, next week is spring break, so make sure that you're taking time and taking a break from all of your schoolwork to just relax and have fun with your families. Really enjoy this time together. All the teachers are going to be doing the same thing. We're going to relax and make sure that we're also spending time with your families. I miss you guys. I hope you guys are all doing really well. Please continue to message us if you have any questions or just want to talk to us. And please continue sending us those pictures or asking us any questions in our messages on Class Dojo. All right, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful spring break, and I will see you next time.